Today I'm reviewing your builds. Hey guys, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. Today I'm going to be reviewing your builds. Well, maybe not your builds because it depends who's actually watching this, but some of your builds. This past Friday, I put up the video with all of the entries to the October Tabletop Crafters Guild Build Challenge. And there was a lot. There was 98 of them, and they were amazing. I've always wanted to do a review video where I discuss some of the community's submissions and talk about them. I just think it'd be really fun. And I really wanted to do that for all the entries this month. I really wanted to do that. But I realized talking about 98 different projects would end up being like a 2-hour long video. So I decided to narrow it down and discuss my 10 favorite entries. A little insight into how we come up with our top 5 finalists, because trust me, it's not easy and it is not a science. Each of the 4 guild masters independently choose their 10 favorite entries. We then cross-reference those lists, and any entries that got multiple votes or picks move on to the next round. Sometimes it automatically works out that there's a clear top 5. Sometimes we have to keep re-voting until we get 5. Today, I'm gonna share with you what were my personal favorites, my top 10 choices, and I'm gonna review them. So I hope the creators of those projects don't mind me doing this. Just know you 10 made what I thought were the coolest thing out of like 100. Let's take a look. All right, no particular order here. So the first one is this bone bridge, and it is one of the top 5 finalists. I absolutely love this build. I think it's pretty clear that this build is very much in line with my personal aesthetic. I mean, look at stuff like my blood fountain. I'm guessing this used the epoxy blood technique. Maybe it's glue, I'm not really sure, but it is truly nasty. Like, this is a badass piece. It should strike some fear on the table. What I really like though is that this is made up almost entirely of cheap skeletons, and a lot of them. A lot of effort went into cutting them up, dissecting the different parts, and using them appropriately to construct a bridge. This to me looks like it could be a real thing, that some crazy maniac made a bridge out of skeletons and made handrails out of spinal cords, and it is just so friggin' metal. It looks awesome. Another thing I want to point out about this picture is you can see here he's using dungeon tiles that are basically the same as my basic dungeon tiles, and one of the reasons that I like this tile system is that you can do stuff like this where, hey, you need a river of blood, no problem, let's just drop some red construction paper underneath, and there's your river of blood, and the side of the tile still look good. Looks great all around. Absolutely love it. And here we have kind of the total opposite. Instead of using a bunch of skeletons and lots of pieces, this is taking one plastic skull and making a piece out of it. And I think this is really clever. They've turned this basic plastic skull into a death tyrant miniature. I'm assuming using some air dry clay or maybe green stuff, something like that. It's a pretty simple sculpt, but it's really effective. It's really iconic, and it looks great. And the addition of the LED for the red eyeball is just killer. Absolutely love this one. I want this for my collection. Now here's another one that made it into the top 5. This one is really interesting. My guess is that he took some plastic skulls and carved some rocks out of foam, maybe XPS foam, attached them, and then used some kind of plaster or putty to blend them. And this is really well executed. This type of thing was done across several of the entries, but this one is just done so well. I almost questioned whether or not actual toy skulls were even used or if these were just entirely sculpted by hand, because the blending looks so good and the particular sculpt on these skulls, it has a really unique look that I don't recognize from a lot of the other plastic skulls. But this is really well done. I also like that it is scatter terrain, and while the skulls do tie it to a kind of iconic looking piece, you could get a lot of use out of this. You could just use it for regular rock formations. The trees are just superbly done. Excellent. These are just high quality pieces, and I really like them. Now with this one here, I'm probably a little bit biased because it was clearly influenced by my old Dark Cathedral build, except that this one is way cooler than my build. The aesthetic is just really evil and black, and I really like it. Now the challenge here is more about the skulls. This is just a well-built building, but I like the way that the skulls were integrated here. The smaller ones kind of blended in, but the one on the door is really what sells it. That really metallic looking castle gray skull type entrance. You walk through the mouth, go up to the ramp. It's really foreboding. He's got lights inside of it, and it looks like the windows have some kind of red plastic and probably some granny grating to make the leaded look. And this is truly sinister. I also really like the flags on top. Just plain black, really ragged looking, pure evil, black metal. I love this. And here's another one that wins a lot of brownie points for me simply for using so many different skeletons mashed together. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the aesthetic of just using a mass quantity of bones and skeletons to create an object or a creature that I think is so cool. It's just so evil. This one, I don't know if this is specifically a monster that exists he's trying to emulate or it's original, but it is definitely cool looking. I really like that there's a big mix of the scale of skeletons used. There's a wide range of size, and I'm guessing some of these are more decoration and some of them are toys, and I really like that mix. I love that from within this creature, there's multiple little skeletons holding weapons. I also really like the cowl or whatever it is behind this thing, this black cloud that's made of shredded material. Maybe it's feathers like there is in the background. But overall, this is just a really sinister build. It's really well executed. I really like that it gets very narrow right in the middle, making the shape seem a little impossible. It really makes it look like this is a pile of bones that has suddenly animated and sprung forth into this shape. Excellent job. Now here's another really well executed integration of a large Halloween skull into some rocks. This is really well done. The rocks here in particular look really great. I love that a lot of effort has been made to put some smaller chunks of rubble in the crevices, and all of that green flocking is really nicely done. It really does look like it's overgrown in some sort of ancient jungle. Overall, really nice. The only complaint I would have with a piece like this versus the other ones earlier that had skulls integrated into some rocks is that this is one big set piece that you'd probably only get to use once, which, hey, that might be exactly what you want in a piece of terrain. For me, I like multi-use and modularity, but it's hard to argue with how cool this thing looks. And even if it only sees play in one game, it's gonna look awesome decorating a game room for years to come. Great work. Now this one here, when I first saw it, it didn't wow me immediately, but the fact that it was such a nice dynamic photo made me really take a better look at it. And that's a word of advice when you're entering these things, is that the better your photo looks, the better your piece is going to look, unfortunately. So it's worth taking some time and effort into the photo. Anyways, as I started to look at this thing, I realized how brilliant it really was. It doesn't use a ton of skulls so much as it does skeleton parts, and namely it looks like there's some dino skeletons, a dragon skeleton head, but I just love how perfectly executed this thing is. The way the bone pieces were chosen and put on this toy cart and done with the real rope, this thing looks perfect. Like, I would love to have this in my collection. It looks so good, but overall, I just really like the idea of it, that the skeleton army is using a skeleton battering ram to knock in a castle door. It's just so neat, so Evil Dead, well executed, and also an additional little plastic ring skeleton or skull is on the door, so that is a nice touch. Great work here. Now here's an interesting submission. It is a Baba Yaga's hut, which is a very classic and iconic item and a go-to build for a lot of crafters. But why this one really captured my attention is that it's really out of the normal for what you would expect for the material. When you think, I'm gonna build something out of skulls or skeletons, there's a lot of things that come to mind. You know, make a fountain, make a Castle Grayskull. There's ways that you kind of default to using skeletons. And this entry made use of those plastic dollar store skeletal animals that are kicking around, namely the skeletal chicken, cut off the entire skeleton, just used the legs and said, hey, I'm gonna make Baba Yaga's hut. And I think that's really interesting and a neat approach. And of course, this thing is just really well built. It's a nicely done Baba Yaga's hut. It's got some little extra skulls on the fence rail, which I think is neat. I think those are the Citadel skulls, which are arguably not cheap plastic skulls, although really they are pretty cheap per skull. Overall, it's just something I wasn't expecting for the challenge material, and it's just well done. Great work. And here's another classic build, a portal. Everybody's made one, or at least they should. I've made multiple, but this one is really neat. Again, I just love the sheer amount of skeletons. This looks like they're just those cheap little skeletal decorations cut up, glued together in a pile. But what I really like here is the way it's done, and they wrap around this portal. It actually creates a sense of motion. I can tell that this is meant to be a bunch of skulls spinning around and swirling, and it's just really, really neat. And I mean, it's not the best paint job I've ever seen, but these builds aren't only about the best job and who is the most skilled. It's, things that are interesting and neat and a cool use of the material. And I think this is a really cool use of the material. It's not something we saw repeated many, many times. And overall, it would be an excellent game piece and probably get multiple uses depending on the campaign setting. Good work. And speaking of unique uses of the material, this may arguably be one of the most unique and original concepts out of all 100 that were involved. I like that it looks like there's multiple skeletal toys here combined to create a boat, which on its own is a cool idea, but the fact that this ferryman on, the river Styx is part of the boat is just so neat, and it's playable. There's minis inside it, which is a really nice touch. Overall, it's just interesting. I will say that there could be some improvement on the paint job. I'm not sure if this was actually repainted, because it looks like some of the paint is the color of how those plastic skeletal toys actually just come, and they might have just been glued together. I could be wrong. Maybe he painted it this way. I'm not sure. Either way, I think the painting could be improved, but the concept is so original and interesting that this easily is one of my favorites. It's just, I can picture all sorts of cool story concepts coming from this. It's a really narrative build, and I really like it. Great job, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this alternative style review video. If you did, hit that like button and let me know in the comments section below. If you want to check out all 98 entries from October's contest, check out last Friday's video. There are so many cool ideas and so much inspiration there. It's worth seeing them all. Thanks to everybody who entered last month's guild build. Cheers.